A coach doesn't learn by taking another course. A coach learns by doing the work, right? And I think that can be something that people forget, that it's really, this is not a cerebral experience. It's about the work that we do face to face, voice to voice, in whatever format with the people that we serve. And we can have all the great ideas, but it's only when we get into the dialogue that the learning and the space gets created. Hi, I'm Jennifer Britton, and welcome to the Coaching Many podcast. I've been on a mission for the last 20 years to expand the coaching conversation to many. Along with my co-host, Ivana Valley, we're going to be exploring coaching as it relates to conversations, connection, and change in both personal and professional settings. Coaching Many is about creating empowering and thought-provoking spaces for conversation which strengthen relationships and enhance results. Throughout the Coaching Many podcast, we'll share tools, practices, and approaches to support you in your conversations, one dialogue at a time. So, Ivana, it's great to sit down with you this morning. It's been a few months since we actually recorded. We'd had quite a few in the quote-unquote virtual hopper. And so we're well into season 2 of the Coaching Many podcast. Great to be with you. Great to be with our listeners. I don't know about you, but I've really been enjoying hearing how people are taking us on the road, into the skies, on car trips. Yeah, it's just fun. And we're recording this in the summer of 2025. So how about you? What are your thoughts and reflections as we really are midstream and in season 2 of the Coaching Many podcast?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, it's good just to be in the conversation again. It's like life happens and things are busy and, vacation, this and that. But just as we talk about in terms of the habits, I've missed this conversation space and just happy to be back here and providing some discipline for me in this conversation and really presencing the importance of the dialogue, whether we are having it here for our listeners or even in our own conversations and groups and teams. And as I like to say once in a while, around the kitchen table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's critical, right? Wherever you're having your conversations, whether it's around the kitchen table, whether it's outside with clients in nature, whether it's in a boardroom, whether it's around a dinner table, as I'm going to be doing with a team later today.
Yeah.
Like really sparking that dialogue is key. So I'm glad that you brought that word, because dialogue comes from the Greek meaning dialogos, two words, two voices. And I think that is really the defining part of group and team coaching. It's about bringing all voices into the room, as we've talked about with engagement, but more importantly, really creating these safe containers for people to bring whatever they want to explore in the moment.
Yeah, totally agree.
Well, let's dive into today's topic. We're going to look at, this is the first of 2 different podcast episodes where we're going to be going back to the competencies. And today, looking at the competencies through the eyes of group coaching, when we're bringing people together from, various backgrounds. If you're in an organization, might be bringing peers together in that, cross-functional space where people get to come and explore similar issues, but on different pathways in that collective learning environment. So I don't know about you, but when I think about groups and competencies, I always go to evoking awareness. That seems to be, really the one that, at least in mentor coaching and supervision, comes up time and time again as that people want to explore further. I don't know. What do you think about when you think about competencies for coaching and great group coaching conversations?
Yeah, I think for me, both as a coach, in the conversation, but also in terms of supporting the people in the conversation, it's awareness, absolutely, but also that presence. Like, how am I showing up for the conversation? How am I showing up in service of the group, in service of the individuals in the group? Really being present to, this is their journey, this is their show, it's their ship or canoe they're canoeing. And so I'm here to hold the space. But really that presence, that curiosity, that space of not knowing is really, I think, for me, and it's something that I always have to be very intentional and mindful of because of my own habits and patterns.
Yeah. Well, I think that maybe this is where we start with both presence and awareness, which is different than the more action oriented, celebrating and, supporting client growth and action. Because coaching isn't just about doing more. Sometimes it is about doing less. And
Mhm.
just as you said, I think the challenge in groups, especially in today's world, is they can be so diverse. Everyone needs something a little bit different. And so, to your comment a few minutes ago about presence, how are we showing up? How are we supporting that range? And I'm sure most coaches, when they hear me start talking about presence, they might start thinking about the superpowers, right?
Yeah.
Which has been a really big part of our work here at Potentials Realize, looking at how our coaches expanding their range, supporting not only action, but grounding, supporting not
Yeah.
only, the meta view of the 30,000-foot view, but also getting into the weeds, getting down into the ground. And those are different coaching styles. It requires different presence, different range. And so, as a coach, are you comfortable holding for all of those possibilities and needs that are showing up within the groups that you're working with? I think that is really the inquiry. So what is this sparking for you?
For me, it's sparking what are the practices. I talk about this. I'm very intentional. So what are the practices to support you as the coach to be able to come in and be flexible and be grounded, like you talked about, without naming the superpowers and building that range. Yeah, it's like going into the weeds. But as you were saying, going into the weeds, I was thinking that grounded labyrinth.
Yeah.
How can you be with whatever's in the conversation, whatever wants to show up? We're now jumping possibly into another core competency of listening. But at the same time, what are those things that you're doing? For example, for me, I do have a design matrix. That's one practice I have to support me to have an idea of what I might be able to do, but I'm not attached to that. That's not
Mhm.
the script,
Yeah.
but it is something that I know I need to help me be grounded. And so I can
Mhm.
show up in service of the group. So I have those bookends as we're talking about. So for me, the presence is not only in how am I showing up, but what are those practices that support me to be able to show up and be present?
Yeah.
So, are for those who are meditation, are you doing breathing? Are you calming your own nervous system, especially if it's a new group and knowing, as you said, there's so much diversity in groups. And how are we even training ourselves, developing ourselves in that space of unknown when that's the space that many of our clients are showing up in that space of vulnerability, in that space of what's next. A lot of the conversations I'm hearing in your conversations, because I'm in them, but also in my own conversations, look at the world right now. We're in July 2025. There's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of change. There's a lot of transition. And a lot of that, and that's a lot of the work that I do, is supporting people through transition. I frame it as evolving through transition, but oftentimes
Yeah.
to evolve, you have to go through that transition, through the messy middle, rather, to get there. But how can we be with that? How can we hold space for that?
Yeah, and that's presence. It's our presence, not just holding it for the client. And so I think there's also a piece around this to get coaches looking at how are they growing themselves? What is the
Mhm.
shadow of their work, and where are they hesitating to go? Where are they going into deeply? Because whatever we're working through will probably show up in the spaces that we are in dialogue with at some level. And what is our level of comfort with that? Are we ready to do it? Are we jumping in? Are we ignoring it? Right? It's really interesting to watch coaches of all experience levels with groups and to see where they go, where they naturally default to, where they don't go as
Mhm.
well. And so I think depending on your own background and your own level of experience and comfort, there is an inquiry here of where are you going and where are you not going?
Yeah, I think that is part of awareness. That is part of the awareness of a coach, is recognizing, not only recognizing the patterns of what you're hearing and helping the group or helping the individual identify those patterns, but what are those patterns for you in terms of where you're going and where you're not going? Because that really is the beautiful place of growth.
Yeah.
For the coach and for the group, in service of the group. Always, we are there in service of the group in this context.
And I would even argue that, you know what, how does a coach learn? A coach doesn't learn by taking another course. A coach learns by doing the work, right? And I think that can be something that people forget, that it's really, this is not a cerebral experience. It's about the work that we do face to face, voice to voice, in whatever format with the people that we serve. And we can have all the great ideas, but it's only when we get into the dialogue that the learning and the space gets created. So, yeah, presence, awareness through action, through the bridge of action.
Beautiful. Absolutely. And we have an episode that speaks about that bridge between awareness and action. So if that's something that's piqued your curiosity, we invite you to go listen to that episode as well as the episode on action and awareness. But it is that bridge. And even as you were saying that, it's like those blind spots. We're talking competencies here, and a big competency really is that our development of ourselves as coaches. And part of that involves awareness, but part of that also just has us have to consider to always, what is that growth edge? Where do you have to develop in service of the group? And you say this real, I don't want to take the words out of your mouth, but you really say this. That's a differentiator of when you're shifting from one-on-one to many. It's more than one conversation in the room. And you as in the listener, you as in me, but we have to be mindful of that. Where are you in that? And where do you need to stretch? Where do you need to grow? Where do you need to evolve? Whatever the word you want to say, to use that so you can stay again in service of the conversation you're having.
Yeah. And what's interesting is, as I'm listening to you, right, one thing that we haven't mentioned but is integral to this work is these skills and competencies are not just important for the coach. In fact, there's a huge part of our work as group coaches in capacity development. That's the term I use a lot. And it's about building the capacity within the group to be better listeners, to also be noticing levels of awareness, to be noticing where they're going, where they're not going. So it's not just about the coach, it's also about enhancing the group's capability and competencies. And I think there's a lot of focus in the world today on what is the next evolution of what coaching is in a world of AI. Well, to me, AI will never replace the group experience, right? When the group is not just the coach. So we want to be thinking about all of this as well through the lens of it's not just about being a great group coach. It's about fostering that environment of being a great group. And so everyone needs to be invested. Everyone needs to be ready. Everyone also needs to be building and using the skills of that.
I think for me, even before people come into the conversations, and it goes back to our ethics, right? Are we clear? Are we sharing what this conversation space that we're calling group coaching is?
Yes.
You know? And I think that's a big part because, a lot of people want their groups filled. Yay, yay, yay. And we want big numbers. And yeah, we want big numbers, but we also want the right people in these conversations. There's that ripeness, that readiness for coaching, which some aren't always ready. There's an ethical piece here on what are you sharing? What are you creating? That space that you're creating, but also are you clearly communicating what it is you're offering so people actually can come into the conversation knowing what they can expect and have that experience.
And that's really critical for people to grow. We're supporting people through the growth edge, which is not always comfortable. It's very confronting. And it's confronting in a world of ongoing change right now, which It's interesting. Again, I would invite people to think about the work that they're doing and how there might be some shifts from how the work has always been done. What is needed to support people through change right now when they may be change exhausted? But they're coming. They want to reach a goal. Maybe they want to grow a business. Maybe it's not they want to, maybe they have to, right? Maybe they've been laid off and now they're coming to coaching to become an entrepreneur and chart their path. What's in the midpoint? It's not just about creating a great plan, it's about changing your identity, changing your mindset. And as we've talked about in other episodes, whether it's the iceberg, whether it's the be do have, that is where the work of coaching lies. It's in the under the waterline, which what's that going to take on the part of both coach and group members to support each other through the change process? Which again, I'll use that word. It can be very confronting. It can be very discombobulating. Change is not easy and it can feel like everything is turned upside down. So as a coach, as group members, how are we supporting each other with that trust, safety, and connection? I think it always has to come back to trust, safety, and connection.
It makes it really difficult, if even possible, to have that shift, those shifts, whether you call it transition, transformation, whatever it is, those shifts, we'll call it. It's really difficult to have one-on-one if there's not trust and safety and connection. Like then the complexity when you bring it into a group context just brings that problem. Could potentially create it on steroids, right?
Yeah.
I think for me, when I think about that trust safety, it's like, again, it's that like, are we creating that space that be do have, but are we also allowing the group, like I'm thinking about Tuckman, like that forming, that storming, like how are we even with conflict? Like, as the coach, like I was working with a group recently and, there was an elephant in the room. It was an unspoken elephant in the room. And whether I brought it up or I invited the group to bring it up, I received a bit of mentorship on it. And it was something that had to be addressed in service again of the group. So that's, again, something that we have to look at. Like, in order for that trust safety to happen, as a group, part of that is bringing those things, those unmentionable things or those unspoken things to the forefront, and I'm not saying this to be week one, but when we don't lay the groundwork, and this is where I think I really celebrate your work, group coaching essentials, team coaching, the foundational programs, the practicum. This really comes to light in life in the practicum when you don't have those structures, those systems in place to support that group to form and to be able to then have them go below the waterline. There's no point in putting it in your planner if the foundations aren't there.
Completely. And like teams, right? I'm sure there's a lot of team coaches listening in as well. And it's the heart of team coaching. What is that level of trust? And I just posted, I think yesterday on LinkedIn, some of the Gallup research, right? 20% of employees trust their leadership right now. 20%.
Wow.
That's, we are in an era of distrust that is not getting better in most instances. And so to the elephant, like, how are we even surfacing that? Because until we acknowledge that, can we build? Right? And it goes back to connection. You can't build something solid on a weak foundation, right?
No.
It will just collapse. Yet, is the coach ready to spark that conversation with a team, with a group? Are people ready to confront that? Are they ready to put that to voice when their livelihoods are on the line? And this is something I've written extensively about and talked about for 15 years now, right? Team coaching can be very confronting on multiple levels, especially in economic downturns where life livelihoods are at stake. And so again, we've got to meet people where they're at, and we want to always spotlight and have the team notice and the groups notice, like, what is the level of trust here?
Yeah.
Can we embark on the conversation? Are we committed to doing what we're saying we're doing no matter what?
Yeah. It's powerful stuff. It's not easy stuff. It's impactful and, oh, I know, and it's not easy. And as you were sharing that, Jen, what came to me was like the word fear, right? The fear to speak up, in team coaching or even in a group context for that matter. There's a lot of sensitivity of not wanting to hurt feelings and, and a lot of this, like, a lot of group coaching is positioned as group coaching when it's not group coaching, right? And so, the group coach in this context thinks that they have to be the one to name the elephant in the room, or oftentimes the group members aren't empowered, haven't created that container that they can speak up. So there's that also. So, there's fear in this statistic. Around 20% of employees not trusting their leader. That's powerful.
Only 20%. So 80% not, right? 80% not trusting.
Yeah.
That is, it's not surprising. It is not surprising. Yet, how does that come into the room, right?
Totally.
We don't operate in a vacuum. Our work operates in the real world. And so we need to be really incorporating this, or else there's no value in coaching, truly. So I think, again, we've been saying this a lot in the year plus of this podcast. We're at really interesting times. Yes, there is opportunity, but we have to go through the fire in order to get there. And I would put the challenge out there, like, our coach is ready for that. We speak a lot about, oh, I've got great skills. Oh, da, 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 da. But even, what comes to mind is, the age old question of like, well, like, even do I have it? do I have the ability? And there's a lot of self-responsibility, I think, on the part of a coach to be ready to journey with clients. But that means we have to have done our own work. And have you done your own work?
Yeah. To me, there's a vulnerability here. There's a vulnerability from the participants to even entertain opening up. But there's also a vulnerability of the coach in leaning into the group to be able to not know what might be said and how they might have to respond to that. And it's so easy to say, oh yeah, naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. Yeah. And it's one thing to hold that. It's another thing to be that. It's another thing to do that. It's another thing to have that, And I think that is, and it's, I'm going to use we only can do that on the ball, in the playing field.
Yeah.
We can't do it from the sidelines.
No, we have to be in it with our clients, and that
with our clients,
again, can be very confronting, I think, for
very confronting,
because we don't know when we're going to be called into the middle of the field, right? Yeah. I think about some of the team engagements I've had in the last month or two, and it's like teams are struggling. They're like, even highly functioning teams are struggling. And that is part of the work. That is part of the conversation. We need to get bruised up a little bit, right? We need to take precaution. And if we're not ready to get into the middle of the field, are we providing the best type of conversation for everyone?
Yeah. And I want to say this, if I may. I think through even my training with your work, there are things that can support this getting on the playing field. Yes. There are things that, like, processes, structures to support that. They're not bulletproof, but they're definitely things. And then layering on these competencies,
Yeah.
support, you're, I don't want to use the phrase armed, but you're more prepared
Yeah.
to go into the middle of the playing field, more so than if you just didn't have these skills.
And it's building the muscles, it's building the habits, right? Which is why we've done episodes on these, because you don't just step into the fray, right? You've got to prepare.
Totally.
And it's not just building muscles, it's building mindset. It's looking ahead, it's developing that 360 view. It's, a whole slew of things. And this is where, again, as coaches, looking for those opportunities all the time to do the work with partners as well. Because I think, we learn
Supervision.
so much by seeing others in action. We learn so much by being with others in action,
Yeah.
because our work alone is different than our work with others. And so I'd invite coaches to really think about their partnering and how their partnering is helping them expand beyond what they can do solo.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Well, as always, a huge episode, right? We didn't go through competencies 1 through 8. Many of you do mentor coaching. The intent for today was to really get us thinking about the many, I'll use my language, the many layers of this work. And for each one of you as listener, there may be a different focus for you at this moment in time. Focus is likely to have been shaped a lot by the people you're working with, whether it's a group, whether it's a team. You may notice, like most of us notice, just the themes across our cross-sectoral groups to teams. Always there's value in hitting the pause. This is why supervision is so important, to really become aware of what is playing out. How are we maybe sometimes in collusion with our clients and in the flow and not noticing because we're so in it, but is that of service to everyone?
Beautiful. I would just add to that, like, supervision is an amazing outlet to help you work through these. And it also takes just being honest with yourself, that pause, that post-mortem, like what worked well in this dynamic today? What didn't? What needs to shift? Like taking some pause to even do some reflection yourself and being able to see the patterns, whether it be in a specific group or threads in groups. We cover this in terms of tricky issues on week 5, but there's that, it goes back to where we started at the front end, that presence, that awareness, and then that bridge to action. And maybe the action is supervision. Maybe it is working with a peer group, whatever that is for each of you, and including me.
And I'll bring that last piece of dialogue, right? It only happens in the dialogue with your group, dialogue with self, dialogue with other peers. Really, as always, we hope that we've sparked a few ideas and some insights. If anything, pull out your latest notes on the competency base, pull out your notes on maybe your last mentor coaching or supervision. Yes, the world is fast, but as Kahneman says, we got to slow down in order to speed up. So hope that this episode has really prompted you to do a little bit of reflection and get back into the action, right? It's that iterative cycle, action, reflection, and our clients really do need us. I hope that this is not making you say, I've got to pause, right? Yes, pause and work, pause and trust your clients. They will direct you, right? It's not a time to sit on the sidelines. It really is the time to hold the spaces that are needed. And there's a lot of spaces needed in the world right now for people to thrive, for people to celebrate, for people to mourn, for people to build bridges. So hope that this episode is getting you just a little more ready for that. And are we ever ready? That is the question. So with that, we will come back together again in another week or two. We really appreciate you. We'd love to hear from you as well. What episodes would you like to see us cover? because there's a lot of terrain, but we always enjoy hearing what you are finding valuable. So please leave a comment, share this, like it. It really does help us get this work out into the world. So Ivana, any final comments before we go to wrap up?
Yeah, just that call to action to subscribe to the channel if you are getting value. So that way you get notifications of the next episode. Like it, share it. And thank you for continuing to listen and being part of the dialogue, whether we're interacting directly with you or not. I see this to be part of the dialogue. So thank you. And thank you, Jen.
Great partnering with you. And I know people like our different layers. So with that, more to come, everyone. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Ciao for now.